Recording. Okay. So hopefully you guys had a good day yesterday. I mean, just hopefully in general. Today's gonna be a relatively shorter day compared to last week, which went the full hour. Today we're just looking at the third poem in our set of poems. This one by William Carlos Williams. He's a poet that lived in the early 1900s, well, like the mid 1900s. He wrote a lot of poetry in a very unique style. It's unique to him, and we'll see a little bit of that today. This poem responds to the previous two, so you can view this as a conversation between these three poets. So that would be a good way of viewing it, because each poem builds off of the previous one. Each poem, despite being written many years apart, they're all part of a greater conversation. So like I said, today we won't go as long, but I'm going to highly recommend that you do the quick write assignment immediately after this. So we will end early, but the expectation is that you use that extra time just like you would in class to get that part done. The reason being, for that particular question, the closer you are to our conversation when you're answering that quick write, the better you're going to end up doing on that response. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so let me share my screen with you. And today we'll probably end up using Padlet again, so keep that in mind. Cool. All right, so here we are. First thing I want to go over are our learning targets. Hopefully you had a chance to go over this before. If not, that's okay. All right, so here's our learning targets for week 4. So the first one, I can identify essential idea of Williams' poem, Raleigh was right. So just like we've done in the previous weeks, we want to understand what the essential idea is. Second one, I can cite and give reasoning for strong evidence supporting Williams' central idea and how it builds upon the themes and ideas of other authors. So this one here is all about understanding how this poem is a part of a greater conversation between all three poets. And then I can analyze and draw comparisons between the common themes in poems by Marlowe, Raleigh, and Williams. All three of these poems are covering very similar themes, which we talked about how with Marlowe, he's glorifying nature. It's a pastoral poem, so it's going to, of course, make an argument for living in the country and why that's a good thing. Raleigh kind of goes against that. He says that country life is not all it's cracked up to be in the nymph's reply, which is what we went over last week. This one called Raleigh was right. We're going to go over in more detail what side that poem takes. All right, so before we start working on the poem, are there any questions about either last week's work, the last poem, anything that needs clarification before we continue? All right. So if that changes, let me know. I'll assume that we're good. I wonder if I could put this, whatever. Okay, I'll assume that we're okay. Okay, so what I need you all to do is please open this document right here. Raleigh was right. I need you all to have it open because we're doing this in a different way than we've done in the past. And I think that this will make it a little easier. Who is this? Okay, good. All right, so have this open. I would like to see more names here. Give you a minute to do that. All right, if you're still opening it, that's fine. I'll just make sure we're getting that open. There we go. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to read this poem, and then as a class, we're going to go over these questions. As we discuss our answers, I'm going to type in what we say into the reply section, and by the end of this, you guys will have a document that pretty thoroughly goes over what this poem is all about, and most of the content will have been created by you guys. So once I read this and we start going over the questions, please unmute yourself so that we can have that conversation. And as soon as we're done with this conversation piece and this is all done, and you have this as a reference, you guys can have the rest of the hour to get that quick write done. Okay. So today's gonna be pretty brief in that regard. Okay, so the poem's called Raleigh Was Right. I'm gonna give it a read, and you guys just listen and think about this first question right here. Raleigh was right. We cannot go to the country, for the country will bring us no peace. What can the small violets tell us that grow on the furry stems in the long grass among lance-shaped leaves? Though you praise us and call to mind the poets who sung of our loveliness, it was long ago, when country people would plow and sow with flowering minds and pockets at ease, if ever this were true. Not now, love itself a flower with roots in a parched ground, empty pockets make empty heads. Cure it if you can, but do not believe that we can live today in the country, for the country will bring us no peace. All right, take a moment, read it again to yourselves. I'll give you like a minute for that, and then we're going to start by discussing this first question. All right, here we go. So please unmute yourself, and we're going to go over these. So again, the more participation we get, the better we're going to understand this poem, the better we're going to understand the conversation between these poems. After this, we'll go over the assignments of the week, and then we'll be all set. All right. So this poem here, Raleigh Was Right. Our first question: what does the title "Raleigh Was Right" suggest about Williams' poem? That's our first question. So, just looking at this title alone, what do you think this title tells us about what the work's going to be about?
It tells us that how you say his name?
Raleigh?
Yeah, how he was right about the poem about the nuff.
Good.
About like yeah.
Good. So the title suggests that he agrees with Raleigh. Good. So we already know off the bat that he's going to agree with him, right? And what was Raleigh's point of view on this again?
That he like disagrees with nature and how it makes everything beautiful.
Okay. That he agrees with Raleigh that nature does not equal. How would you complete that? That nature does not equal what?
Satisfaction.
Okay. That works. So the title suggests he agrees with Raleigh that nature does not equal satisfaction. Okay, so we have two sides, right? We've since the start, we've had two sides of this argument. We've had the pastoral argument. That was Christopher Marlowe. Nature's beautiful. It's going to provide for you. He's asking this person to go into the country, live with him, be in this relationship. Rally side, the opposite. The nymphs reply, the beautiful woman saying, well, I'm not going to follow you into the country because here's all the bad things that happen in nature, right? So this poem is aligning itself more with the latter, right? More with nature is not necessarily this purely beautiful thing, right? And we'll talk more about that. All right, good. So let's look at the second question. What do lines 1 through 3 suggest about the identity of the speaker of the first stanza? So what we're looking at here is whose point of view is this poem being written from? Who's the speaker? So we cannot go to the country, for the country will bring us no peace. Okay, so the way I want you to think about this before you answer. Think about all the we'll call them characters though, and you don't really identify characters, but there's really like two like figures, right? In this conversation, we had the shepherd, we had the shepherd's love. Of those two figures, which do you think is the speaker? Which do you think who is speaking? So do we think it would be the shepherd or the woman, and why? Oh, let's see. The shepherd's love. Okay. Tayshawn, why is that? Like, or like, how do you know, rather? So how do we know it's the shepherd's love? And if anyone would like to jump in, that works, either in the chat or verbally. She's correct, because she's telling him she can't go with him. Okay, so we have this person who's saying, I cannot go with you. Just based on context between these three poems, we know that it's the shepherd's love. Okay, so the speaker is the shepherd's love. I'm just going to kind of put what you put in here, because she is telling the shepherd that she cannot go with him into the country. Good. Now, why is that? Of course, she says that the country will bring them no peace. Okay. So this part here, this no peace part, is important. So I'm actually going to put that, I'm going to highlight that. Oh, it actually didn't even matter. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's stupid. Put it in bold and underlined. Anyway, so that no peace part is important, because that aligns with our previous poem, right? So stanza 1 continues, and it tells us, what can the small violets tell us that grow on the furry stem? So we have some imagery here, right? We got some imagery of nature. I'm actually going to make a comment here. Nature imagery. We have the violets stems. They have fur on them. In the long grass among lance-shaped leaves. Now, this part here, lance-shaped leaves. Who knows what a lance is?
I have no clue.
Does anyone have an idea what a lance is? It's a weapon. So a lance is like a spear, kinda. It's kind of like a spear. Point is used to stab, right? So lance-shaped leaves. Why do you think Williams would pair, just based on what we know about the poem so far, why would he pair the imagery of a weapon with the imagery of nature? So describing a leaf as lance shaped, as like a weapon. Why do you think he would do that?
Is because in the, like as like in the future, like nature won't be like a guidance anymore.
Okay, so lance shaped leaves. I'll put nature. Now, what do you mean exactly?
Like you know, like how he said in his first poem, like that he wanted to he take it to the country or whatever,
Right,
say that he give her everything, the pleasures and stuff like that, and like he's saying like in here like as like the future continues on like nature wouldn't be a thing. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying it's not gonna be a thing anymore, but it's like
right.
in his opinion, it's no need for no nature anymore.
Okay, so maybe nature doesn't provide in a positive way.
Yeah.
Describing nature as a weapon. Okay, good. So there's that. Let's look at this question that I just sort of replied under in more detail. How does the first stanza of Williams' poem introduce essential ideas? So we're looking for essential idea. So again, like our conversation last week between the idea of a topic and a theme or central idea, I want us to be able to distinguish between those two here. Obviously, our topics again, love, nature, and the relationship, right? That's what this poem's about. We want to start to get to the heart of what this poem is trying to teach us, right? And our conversations have we're like just about there. So if you could in the chat, and I want to get as many of you guys as possible. What do you think the main idea or the theme is, just based on this first stanza? What is Williams trying to teach us through this poem? I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes. If you'd like to discuss it with each other, that's fine. I'm going to put myself on mute on this microphone so I can't hear you. Type in what your responses are. You guys about 2 minutes. Want to get at least one more. Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. And if you're still typing away, that's fine. Let's go over these. So, Allison, you said, I think the poem is trying to, I assume, to teach us to hate nature. Okay. Uh, Xavier, nature gives no guidance for love, and Sania, the relationships between nature and women brings no peace. Okay. So, I like bits and pieces of each of these. Allison, I think Cordell, that nature doesn't bring peace. Okay, good. So, Allison, I like this idea of getting people to maybe not hate, but distrust or question nature. Okay, I think that's good. Nature giving no guidance for love. I think that that's good. The idea that nature um is not necessarily uh providing everything that these, we'll call them, characters need. Um and then this idea of peace here in these last two. Could either Cordell or Sunil, what about, why peace? Why focus on that based on the first stanza? If one of you would like to just give a little explanation, because I'd say that you two are probably the closest. So why choose that, or like how do we know that that's what he's trying to say with this poem? Just need a little bit of clarification. Or if someone else would like to help out, why is this idea of no peace emphasized, or how do we know it's being emphasized? Because how she's talking about, okay, what do you mean? How is it being talked about? Obviously, we have literally, right, that they're saying no peace, so we know that. But what about down here? What do we talk about? um what do we briefly discuss imagery wise that would suggest no peace? I just want to make sure that we're making that connection. So in these highlighted lines here, what what about these lines is suggesting no peace? Poison. Where is there poison? Thank you. That nature can be seen as a weapon. Good. So we got this lance shaped leaves idea. Good. So the main idea, we can say, just sort of combining everything that you guys said. Nature can be viewed as a weapon. The relationship between humans and nature is not harmonious, right? It's not necessarily going to be like the pastoral version that Marlowe is talking about, where everything is great, everything is peaceful. Come into the country, we'll take all of these natural things and create the things that you want, and you'll be happy, right? This is more cynical, right? It's more, some might say more realistic. I don't necessarily I don't necessarily want to say that, because it kind of depends on your point of view, but some people would argue it's a more realistic take, that that the relationship with people and nature, especially if you think about it like nowadays, right? You can kind of connect this to like modern conversations, things like pollution, climate change. The Would you say that we have a good relationship with nature now, right? So that's kind of an ongoing conversation. This is just a more literary version of that same talk. Okay, let's continue. Okay, um here we go. Who is the speaker of the second stanza? To whom is the stanza addressed? All right, so let's look at this second stanza here. Though you praise us and call to mind the poets who sung of our loveliness, it was long ago, when country people would plow and sow the flowering minds and pockets at ease, if ever this were true. Okay. Who is speaking in this second stanza? And I'll give you a hint. It's not a person. So it is not a person who is speaking. Though you praise us and call to mind the poets, nature, good. Nature is the speaker here. So different from the previous two poems, which was just we had the shepherd in the first one, we had the nymph or the beautiful woman in the second one. This one kind of bounces perspectives, right? We start off with the woman, and now we've got nature itself, right? So nature speaking. There's a speaker in the second stanza is nature itself. All right, good. Now, how do we know that? If you look, though you praise us, I mean, what's being praised? I mean, the poets are praising nature. It's in the topic, so you just have to do a little bit of inference there. To whom is nature addressing? So, who is nature trying to talk to in this stanza? Though you praise us and call to mind the poets who sung of our loveliness, it was long ago. Who's being talked to by nature? And to answer that, you just have to ask yourself, who is praising nature in the first place? Marlowe's shepherd. Okay, good. So the shepherd in Marlowe. Good. So the shepherd's being talked to, being addressed here. They're and we've got nature replying to him, right? So though you praise us and call to mind the poets who sung of our loveliness, it was long ago, long ago. Okay, so keep in mind here, this poem is written many, many years. I mean, this is 1944, right? The original poem was in the 1600s. So the many, many years, the long ago is referencing that gap in time. So this poem is recognizing that things have changed, right? That in the 300 years approximately between Marlowe's poem and this poem, something has changed. Now, the question you have to ask yourselves as we're going through this is, has nature changed, or have people changed, or has nothing really changed and Marlowe's always just been wrong, right? That's kind of the three options. So it's saying long ago, when country people would plow and sow with flowering minds and pockets at ease. Okay. What's he saying here? When country people would plow and sow with flowering minds and pockets at ease, if ever this were true. What's being said here? This part's very important to our understanding. What is being said here? And if you're stuck, let's start with what is literally being said. What is the poet literally saying these people are doing? All right, plowing and sowing. So that's like farm work, right? So they're doing farm work, but I'm more interested in the flowering minds and pockets at ease. What does that mean? Like if you have a flowering mind and your pocket is at ease, what's the implication there? She's not okay. So she or whomever the nature is talking about in this instance, they're not worrying. Um, so flowering minds, pockets at Eddie's. Which one of those do you think is more so saying that they don't have any concerns or worries? So I think one of those fits best. We got flowering minds, and then we got pockets at ease. Okay. Um, Tayshawn, why is it pockets at ease? You're not concerned about money. Good. All right. So this idea that if your pocket is at ease, you're not really worried about paying for things, right? Now, flowering minds. So if you have a mind, right, I want you to think of what a flower does. So a flower, if you're in biology talking about flowers, you start with a flower bud, right? And as the bud grows, it pops open and it blooms and it becomes what you think of as a flower. So if Marlowe is creating a metaphor here, right, and comparing a person's mind to a flower that is flowering, what is he saying about the people's minds or the people's imaginations? How could we characterize the way that those people think according to the poem? Mind is growing. Good. Okay. So what we've done is we've answered his question here. What does William suggest about life in the country? So nature as a character in this poem, as a speaker, right, is sort of like thinking back to an older time, to Harlow's time. And Williams is suggesting a couple of things. First of all, that so he suggests the following, and we're going to make a list based on what we said. So one, that they're country people, right? Um, they're country people now who work or who do physical labor. Now, keep in mind, William Carlos Williams wrote this 1944 during World War II, right? The farm life, while there was still a lot of it, you had a lot more industry. This is after the Industrial Revolution. You got more factory life, more city life. So he's coming from just a different time period in general, right? Where there's more technology, more automation. Um, there's more people living in big metropolitan areas. Whereas in Harlow's time, the country life was like the ultimate thing you could do, right? So it's a different point of view in that way. So that's the first thing. Two, people had growing, to use Tayshawn's word, or creative minds, right? So he's recognizing that people had very fruitful imaginations, right? He's suggesting that people thought in a different way. Um, Three, people did not have as many financial worries, perhaps. That was the other thing that we said. They had pockets at ease, that everything was not, maybe not everything, but many things were taken care of, that they could get everything that they needed from nature, right? They grew their own food, and they needed clothes, they would make them, things like that. So this is kind of a clash of just two separate time periods, right? And it's interesting as you go through these poems and you look at how the conversation has evolved. I mean, it's evolved based on a lot of historical factors, right? As you get closer and closer to the modern day, the people's viewpoint of what is a person's relationship with nature, that essential question, it changes, right? Now when he says, if ever this were true, what's the tone of that? If ever this were true. So if you had to describe it with a tone word. So this would be like the equivalent of me talking about like the 1800s, right? And I'm kind of spouting off a bunch of stereotypes about people back then. I said, well, I mean, if it's even true, what would my tone be? What do we think the tone is? Aggressive. Okay. Let's go with something. So aggressive in that it's adversarial or confrontational to whatever the established belief is. So I think, but not angry, right? So I would say skeptical. All right. So it's a skeptical tone. Williams is questioning whether the people back then ever lived like that. Right. So if ever this were true, he's not even sure if it was an actual thing or if it was just a stereotype. Because again, he Williams does not have any special knowledge that the rest of us don't. He was just a guy. He liked to write poetry. He was good at it, right? He didn't have any special information about people 300 years ago that we don't have. He just assumed like everyone else, right? Okay. We've got two more questions. So this one here, how does Williams use figurative language in lines 17 through 20 to develop a central idea of his poem? Okay. I actually put line numbers on here just for this. All right, 17's here through 20. So this section right here that's highlighted. I want you all to look at this section. It says, not now. So you have to read it with the last line of the second stanza in your mind, and then you go on to the third. So if ever this were true, not now. That not now is a response to it. So not now. Love itself, a flower with roots in a parched ground. Empty pockets make empty heads. Okay. Two things here. First off, I want someone to look this word up, or if you know what it means. What is parched? What does that mean? If you're not sure, look it up. Because in order to understand this figurative language, you need to understand what that means. What does parched mean? If you're not sure, look it up. All right, good. Dried out, or so it's either dried or thirsty. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So this not now, we know that that's a response to if ever this were true. So he's making the argument that it's not true now, right? That people don't live like he was saying in stanza 2 now. Love itself, a flowers. So he's comparing directly love to a flower. So we know that's a metaphor, right? Because he's not using like or as. He's just stating love is a flower. Love itself, a flower, with roots in a parched ground. So roots in a dried out ground. What is that metaphor saying about what the poem's about? If your flower is in a dried ground, what is that telling us about the country? What is that telling us about the nature?
Isn't it saying that it's gonna die out soon?
Good. So it's saying it's going to die out soon. So if you're a flower, you're in a dried ground, you're not going to survive, right? So it's saying that nature's harsh. So let's actually put this in there. So love is a flower with roots in a parched ground. Notice how I put the little slash here when you switch lines in a poem. Williams lines 17 through 18. Okay, so love is a flower with roots in parched ground. This is a metaphor, right? We know that. This is a metaphor. I can't think of the word. That suggests nature is a harsh place to live. Because a flower in dry dirt won't grow, right? Or something like that. I mean, if I went back and changed it, we can make it sound better. But essentially, the metaphor here in nature's a harsh place, and just like a flower that's in dry ground, it wouldn't grow, right? So the flower in dry dirt won't grow. Williams, in drawing this comparison to love, is stating, therefore, that love will not grow, right? So, yeah, again, we can make that sound better. Thank you, Marian. But yeah, so he's saying love is that flower that's in dry ground. A flower in dry ground would not grow, would not bloom, would not flower. So therefore, the love won't. All right, and then he says, "Empty pockets make empty heads." What does that mean? What do we make of that? Empty pockets make empty heads. What does that tell us about the country? Especially when you compare it to up here when he's talking about, oh, well, back then people had flowering minds and pockets at ease. What is he saying here with empty pockets and empty heads? Tells us that they're not rich. Okay, good. So these people aren't rich. They have empty pockets. They struggle. So the lines, empty pockets make empty heads, suggests that people who live the country life are poor, right? This is the opposite of what the speaker in stanza 2, I'll type it out, suggests about Marlowe's time. Right. So this is the opposite of what the speaker is saying was true in Marlowe's time, where everyone had flowering minds and they had great creativity, freedom of thought, right? And their pockets were at ease. They had what they needed, right? Compare that to here, where the people do not have what they need. Keep in mind, this poem came out only a little bit after the depression. So historically, if you think about it from like a historical perspective, everyone was hurting back then. You had the Depression, you had World War II. Really, the United States didn't really start recovering until after the war, because there were a lot of opportunities for like money making and things like that. So at this point, there were a lot of people who were very poor, right? So if you think about these two examples of figurative language, Williams is really just characterizing like modern nature here, right? As a harsh place, a harsh environment, not harmonious with people. The country is somewhere where people struggle because, again, at this point in time, not the ideal life, but in order to have a good life, most people went to the cities, right, and worked in factories and things like that. So, just the point of view changed with the culture. All right, and then finally, according to the speakers of Williams' poem, about what was Raleigh right. Okay, so this question just kind of caps everything off. So everything that we've talked about so far, what is Raleigh right about according to this poem? Think about it. I want to get a couple of us, at least four, to put something in the chat. What was Raleigh right about according to this poem? Nature's dying out soon. Okay, I need a little more detail though. You could write a whole paper on this. So I need a little more. Because remember, with the other two poems, we focused a lot about the relationship between humans and nature, right? So this poem is going to naturally continue that conversation, right? So what is this poem adding to the conversation, or to that relationship between people and nature? So Sania, she was right about the country. Okay. Right about it being what? Getting little snippets. So if you think about Marlowe's poem, right? Marlowe was talking about pastoral life being great, as we've said. What's William's response to that? Does he agree? How things in nature will fade out? What things? And in answering that question, what are the things that we've talked about in these three poems? So I agree that something is definitely fading, right? He agrees that nature will die. Not that nature is going to die out. So I don't want you to think that this is a poem saying that nature's screwed, right? It's not necessarily the case. Not the earth. Maybe if there was another poem written about this same stuff now, it would be that. So not flowers, not nature, right? Remember that the original poem was about the relationship between nature and love, right? And how a good ideal love happened as a result of harmony with nature. So if now we don't have harmony with nature, what's going to happen to love? And then this poem expands on that creativity, the way that people are able to live their livelihood. What's being said here? So we know that the country, as described in this poem, right? Williams describes the country as having no peace, right? As parched or barren, right? It's an inhospitable place. Sneha says she's right about the country dying out like flowers. Love is dying. Okay, so good. So Williams describes the country as having no peace. It's parched. It's barren. It's not. It's a an inhospitable place for modern people, right? Um, in nature or in the country, people are poor and therefore not creative, right? They have empty pockets. They have empty heads, and therefore not capable or not able to have creative thoughts. Because obviously, if you're worried about money or where your next meal is going to come from, you're not going to be worried about how to make the next great poem, right? You're not going to be worried about creative things. So it lacks creativity, it lacks imagination. If you don't have creativity or imagination, love the flower, right? Because the metaphor, actually, I'm going to label it as a metaphor here for you guys. Love, or as the metaphor goes, the flower won't bloom or grow. So overall, Raleigh agrees, right, that nature, sorry, Williams agrees with Raleigh, right, that nature is not ideal, right? Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Okay, so this here is going to be for you guys. These notes here, so you're just going to be able to access this. That's pretty much as far as we need to go with it. Your assignments, one of them is a quick write. Now, listen closely about that quick write, okay? The quick write, you have two options. You could either write it like you normally would, or you can record yourself explaining it, okay? Now, no matter which one you choose, you still need a claim, two pieces of evidence, reasoning. And I would hope that you could record yourself in such a way where you can kind of do like something like this, where you're explaining it with it on screen. So whether you can technologically or whatever, point is you have two options. You could just write it out or you can explain it. Now, if you explain it though, you're still being graded on the same standard. So you kind of have a risk of not explaining enough, but some people explain better when they talk it. So whichever one you're more comfortable with, you just attach it to the assignment. You get that in. I recommend you do that today, just because this whole thing is fresh in your heads, and I think you'll do a lot better on that. The second one, just comparing all three poems. Make sure that's done by Friday. Okay, you're gonna look for quotes in all three. So all three poems are on Classroom. And yeah, so that'll be due Friday. If you have questions, of course, let me know. But yeah, so this is going to be on Classroom. It already is. Obviously, you guys are in it now. So these notes are yours. You use them to help you. Do we have any questions?
Wait, Coach, I can't see the notes that we took on the Google Doc.
So the comments you can't see?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll find a way to save it as like a PDF or something, and I'll post it.
Okay.
I'll find a way to make sure you can see them.
All right.
All right, cool. Any other questions? All right, let me just take a picture of the list. All right. And you guys, if there are no more questions, you guys are good to go. And have a great day.